very excited today to have Pat with us to share about her research, the knowledge she has in the field of emotional intelligence. So please join me in welcoming Pat Baxter to the stage.
Well, good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Great, great. Well, the weather kind of held up for us. I was kind of concerned we were going to walk in drenched, but nevertheless our spirit high. I don't know all of you yet, but I can already tell we are connected, not only with our association with this forum, but also with our interest in emotional intelligence and understanding what it is and how we can use it. So that's what I'm here to talk about. And I have to say one thing. Kudos to the Conference Planning Committee for being brave enough to put this topic on the agenda. Because emotional intelligence is still, believe it or not, controversial. This concept of emotional intelligence only became spoken and said and identified in 1985. And 1990-92 is when the books started to come out. So it's really a relatively new thing, and some people still think that emotional intelligence is nothing but intelligence plus emotional stability. And it's much more than that, and I think you'd agree with me on that. So the other thing I wanted to say is kudos and thanks to Winn-Dixie. They are a first-time sponsor of this conference, so I thank you very much. It just tells me, again, what a company this is, and its commitment not only to the community, but also to leadership and the development of same. So, let me take a quick poll, if I may. First of all, how many of you have had exposure to emotional intelligence in terms of training, assessments, being certified in an instrument, something like that? Okay, good, quite a few. How many of you believe that emotional intelligence has made a difference in your career and the working relationships? Great. Third question, how many of you believe that because emotions are messy, you may not have always made the best decision? Yeah. That's part of what we're going to take a look at and talk about why is that, what happens. And there are, of course, social, cultural, but also physiological reasons that this happens. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. There's so much to cover. I started formally studying emotional intelligence, and it's taken me 7 years to complete this work and this research. So, and we've got like 40 minutes. So, I'm going to chunk it for us. The first chunk is level setting our definitions of some words that we use rather freely. Emotion and emotional intelligence. So let's just level set. What does that mean? What does it look like? Then the second thing we have to take a look at is how is emotional intelligence a factor in leadership? Especially for women leaders. And third, sometimes there are some practices that we can apply in the moment and sometimes planned out that helps us apply our strengths in emotional intelligence, and we certainly do have some as female and male. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share that, what I've learned along the way. And just as an FYI, there is a Q&A session built into the end. So if you have questions, please do me a favor, just write them down, and we will get to as many as possible. So this presentation is turning messy emotions into gender strengths. A few months ago, when I started scoping out this session, there was a great deal of interest on the part of the committee on my original research, which was the effects of emotional intelligence on the conflict management styles of HR professionals. And so that's what I focused on. And I did that because I've been in HR for a long time. And one of the things I discovered is that there wasn't very much work around looking at human resources and the role of emotional intelligence in those types of jobs. And I was rather surprised, and I didn't think it was a right thing to be, so I decided to study it. So with this study, I looked at emotional intelligence through several lenses. One was tenure. Is the longer you're in human resources and in an HR role, how does that affect how you apply emotional intelligence? Do you learn more? Do you apply more? The second thing is age. The second lens was age. And is it true that we get wiser as we get older? And the third thing I looked at, and this was the lens that got me, gender. Are there indeed, as it says here, are there gender differences with regard to emotional intelligence? So that's one of the things that I want to share with you. But before we answer that question, again, I'd like to define some of those key terms. So that's what we're going to take a look at right now. And one of the things that's really important is to realize emotional intelligence matters because it seems that over 67% of the approval and the behaviors that make a difference in successful leadership do tie in some way, shape, or form to emotional intelligence. So it's certainly worth taking a look at. So, what is an emotion? Well, it was a great song by the Bee Gees at one time. But obviously, much more than that. As you look at these faces, what are the emotions? What are you seeing? I read tons and tons of texts, books, studies, psychological profiles, looking for one elusive thing, and that is a simple definition of emotion that would ground me and my work so that it didn't get convoluted, because if we were to poll the audience, we'd probably have a million different definitions of emotion, what it is. So I finally found one. Emotion is an organized mental response to an event or entity. So that just means we can react to everything that comes into life, everyone who comes into our lives. We have the potential of having some kind of emotional response to that entity or person. And while emotions can get messy and can get in our way, one of the things that I think we all need to realize, and we may already do this, is appreciate what emotions do for us on many levels. And there are three ways that emotions serve us. First of all, they help us manage our inner world. They help us understand us, how we're feeling, how we view something, how we're likely to respond. And emotions are critical for us in terms of knowing how to respond, appropriately respond to these events and entities. The second thing that emotions do is they help us manage our relationships in the world. They help us to connect with one another. They help us to understand one another. And sometimes that's all we have, is the emotion to connect to. So, and I'll give you another example. I was talking with someone I'm coaching right now, and he was talking about how the emotions were playing out in his negotiations with a vendor and how they were getting in the way. And we started to talk about what was really happening. So they do help us, but they do get in the way if we don't understand the roles that they play. The third thing, third way that emotions serve us is they help us to act. Emotional intelligence is not something brand new. It goes back to Darwin. Darwin wrote about how emotion really helps a species to survive. They are compelled to fight. They are compelled for territory. They are compelled to find a mate. They are compelled to go forward with their lives, and it's something that we just can't leave behind. So one of the things that we wanted to do is to take a look at how emotions really help us to survive, both figuratively and literally. They help us to find positive feelings. Emotions help us find what makes us feel good. And they also help us avoid the things that make us feel badly. So they are absolutely critical things for us to survive. Now I'm gonna confess here. I was for a very long time not a fan of emotions. They got in my way. Meet a younger me. This is me at the start of my corporate career. I had left public education, and I, through networking, got a job as a manager at a Wall Street firm. And at that time, it was a time where there were few women in management positions. As a matter of fact, I remember the first meeting of a group we called Women on Wall Street, and there were 10 of us. So we were a rare breed. And one of the things that was interesting about that experience is that here I am saying, I can't show my feelings. I can't show how angry I am. I can't show how mistreated I feel. And I kept my emotions to myself. And that takes a toll on you after a while. I worked with and for mostly men, and their mantra seemed to be, never let them see you sweat. For women, it was never let them see you cry. Even if you were so angry you could eat a chair and spit it out, you could not show it. And that, as I said, took a toll on me. So many years later, realized that was my first introduction to this thing called emotional intelligence. And he simply said, emotions are part of life, but you don't have to let them rule your life. And so partly because of Uncle Albert, and certainly partly because of leaders in emotional intelligence, such as Daniel Goleman, Mayer and Salovey, I came up with my definition, my guiding light, if you will, around this topic. Emotional intelligence is realizing we are the owners of our emotions, and as such, we are responsible for managing them. Make sense? And it's a realization that I came to through not only my study, but also just simply living through life. So what is this emotional intelligence look like?